What's up guys, this is Take a Look here, bringing you a bit of a different video. A review of Stone Cold podcast with Brock Lesnar. Now guys, without further ado, I just want to jump straight back into this and say that I thoroughly enjoyed the podcast. I thought it was something very unique and very special, something amazing, and it was really good to see it all kick off, basically, and just to see something nice, something a bit more unique, because we don't get to see Brock talk that often. Anyway, one of the first things that was mentioned off the bat is Brock Lesnar's passion for wrestling. You know, and it shows a lot more of Brock's human side. Essentially, that, you know, everyone thought Lesnar was just this stone cold mercenary, and don't get me wrong, he said throughout the podcast that he is purely business and he wants to do business and, you know, such like that. He always looks after himself at various different bits and pieces, but at the same time, you know, I felt like I could respect Lesnar more because he said he had passion for the industry. He knew what he wanted to do from when he, you know, got the opportunity, and that's, you know, all you can ask really. Lesnar said he wasn't a fan of wrestling growing up, but only because he didn't have access to the TV channels. He never graduated from the University of Minnesota. And there was a funny story told throughout the podcast. Lesnar got there at 5:30 a.m. on a Monday morning, having left on the Thursday with only $400 in his pocket. His car broke down and all sorts, man. It's always good to hear wrestlers tell these old stories, even like if it's not from times in the wrestling ring, because, you know, you can relate. Everyone's had a fucked up issue to them where their coaches got delayed, trains got delayed, or their cars broke down, or I don't know, man. Have you ever been late to your fucking in-laws' house or something like that? It is rather ridiculous. But anyway, they then go on to talk about Brock Lesnar's first run in the WWE and how Lesnar perceived it. Lesnar said he was blown away by the WWE training facilities. It was so crazy. It was so basically, what was the word that they used? Lesnar used a really good word. It was so, you know, grueling. It was just mad. But Lesnar said he loved it. He loved throwing himself straight into it, and it was amazing to do that. It was so, you know, intense. It was mental. For one, it made me want to get in there and fucking start training for a WWE career. I say that. So that's what Lesnar was trying to do. Their mission accomplished. Lesnar said when he was a rookie, he rode with The Undertaker and Kane sometimes at the start and got great advice from them, as well as a particular piece of advice he mentioned that he got from The Rock, who was told to be selfish and watch his back. I thought that was quite good because I didn't know that Lesnar rode with Kane and Undertaker back at the start, and I certainly didn't know he got a piece of advice from The Rock. Lesnar said the only night that The Rock chose not to be selfish was when he actually handed Lesnar his first WWE title victory at SummerSlam 2002, which seems ages ago now, 13 years ago. Jesus fucking Christ. They then go on to talk about WrestleMania 20 and his match with Bill Goldberg and all, like, you know, the ugliness that was ensued that night, and the crowd backlash and the boring chants and the "you sold out" chants and all of that palaver. Lesnar basically, like, goes on to say he didn't care if he was at WrestleMania 20 or not. He just seemed it as bullshit to him. He knew that he was leaving the next day. The road and the people killed it for him. He said he was becoming a person he didn't like. He didn't have a plan post WWE, but he knew, like, this wasn't the end. He knew this wasn't it. Stone Cold then goes on to ask him about the WWE lawsuit, to which, I don't know, Brock seemed a bit cagey to me, but he said it doesn't matter about that. It's, as far as Brock's concerned, it is all indeed water under the bridge. Lesnar says post WWE he walked into a UFC event as a fan. He tried to get in contact with Dana White previously, but Dana White didn't return his calls, etc, etc. So Lesnar said he went there as a fan, hopped the barricade, tapped Dana White on the shoulder. They eventually had a meeting. Lesnar got a chance, and even though he lost his first UFC match, Dana White was so impressed with all the publicity and the actual skill, you'd have to assume, of Brock Lesnar, that they went on to talk and eventually got something sorted out. Stone Cold and Brock then went on to talk about Lesnar's illness, his diverticulitis, and this is for me where, you know, it got a bit sad because it really made you feel compassion for Lesnar, like an athlete at the time, at the top of his game, very, very unique, very, very amazing. Let's be honest, Lesnar, a pro wrestler, coming across to, I don't want to say a real sport because, you know, wrestling is real. The injuries are real. The you know, the fucking falling through tables, getting smacked by chairs, ladders, etc., etc. All of that is real. You can't fake that shit. And anyone that says wrestling is fake is ignorant and stupid. It's scripted, not fake. Choreographed, maybe. Right? But here's the thing. Lesnar, an athlete who came across from WWE to literally dominate mixed martial arts UFC and then have his career cut short by an illness that wasn't in his control. Lesnar says that, you know, at first he was stubborn and refused an MRI and such things, and that basically kind of fucked him up and shit like that, you know, and eventually he got healthy again, he felt alright, but then went back into the UFC one match afterwards, and then as soon as he lost that, he knew it was kind of over, is the gist that I was getting from that. They then go on to talk about Stone Cold's 2002 walkout, and, you know, how he didn't want to job to Lesnar as such. Stone Cold says the only problem that he had with that was the fact that he'd be jobbing to a rookie on free TV with no build-up, no creative. Lesnar says that he had no problem with Stone Cold walking out and agrees with his perspective, that it was probably someone else's on the other side's fault, and Stone Cold admits that he didn't handle it well, as he said many times before. But I, for one, agree. You know, you can't have your best star of the last 5 years, and what Austin was at the time, lose to, you know, Lesnar, who, as great as he is now, was a rookie at the time. It's very, very stupid booking, but WWE seems to have that in abundance. It was refreshing to see Lesnar so humble about that. You know, he didn't, you know, he weren't bothered, which is nice to see because he weren't expecting too much. They then go on to talk about, you know, Dana White and Vince McMahon. Lesnar says there's no real difference between them in the sense that money comes from ego, or ego comes from money rather. He says he himself has always done business straight up, and he says he'll tell you what he don't think is fair, and you'll tell him, and you reach an impasse. Stone Cold then goes on to ask Lesnar, did you really consider getting back into the UFC when your contract was coming up? And Lesnar said he did. He even started doing training camps. The main reason, you know, that he wanted to is because he felt robbed by the diverticulitis, his illness, you know, and it makes me feel a more appreciation to Lesnar that he chose to stuck around and, you know, be part of the UFC. Be part of the UFC, not be part of the UFC, and be part of the WWE. He then goes on to talk with Stone Cold about promos and says that he owes a lot of it to Paul Heyman. He says he don't need to talk. He says during this run he's more hands-on with Vince than he was in his first run and doesn't have to deal with all the random people in between. It's just pretty much him and Vince on a constant basis. They talk about breaking the streak, and Lesnar himself said it was almost bigger than winning the WWE title at the time. He says he gets stick and criticism for it, but questions if there is another man out there with that credentials. And me, myself, personally, have always thought that the streak shouldn't have been broken. It's hard for me to say, it's hard for me to admit. I still don't think it should have been broken, but I agree with Lesnar. There was no one else with the credentials that could have actually made it believable. You know what? This guy went in the streak, etc., etc. What made it so bad is the actual fact that there was no build-up at all. Absolutely nothing. You know, beyond just a couple of weeks and Lesnar hitting his first F5 on the go-home show before WrestleMania. You know, that kind of thing. But that could all be kind of fixed this Sunday when Undertaker beats Lesnar in Hell in a Cell. Hopefully, that's my opinion. Lesnar said he has a good idea on where he's going with this current run. He's having fun, and he says to Stone Cold as they begin discussing, do you think it's better this way that you left, or, you know, etc., etc. Lesnar goes on to say that he's made Vince more money this way, that he stepped away, made a name for himself outside of UFC. And, you know, you could argue that I agree with Lesnar. You could argue that he has brought an air of legitimacy back to the WWE. I mean, the guy's a fucking former UFC heavyweight champion. A WWE superstar practically walked into the octagon and fucking won the belt and was pretty much unchallenged for a while before he got ill. And it was only illness that beat him. So suck on that, you know. Pretty much a WWE superstar. Even before he was in UFC, he was a WWE superstar. So, you know, it's good. It made me feel good about being a wrestling fan. Anyway, Stone Cold then asked, what would the Brock today tell the Brock back then? Brock Lesnar says, make sure this is what you're going to do. Make sure you understand everything. He then goes on to say, kids these days expect too much. They don't want to work for it and all of that palaver. Me having 3 young brothers, I can certainly agree with that. And I can certainly see where Lesnar's coming from. But, you know, Brock had a hard life. Like, he was fucking a dairy farmer getting up at 6 a.m. to fucking milk the cows, rain, hail, sleet, you know, whatever the hell Lesnar said he had to do it, pretty much. So I can understand where he's coming from. Austin then closed the podcast by asking Lesnar, what about Hell in a Cell? And Lesnar said, I'm prepared for anything. I'm going to end the Undertaker's career. It's going to be a lot of carnage. And that's where the bloody podcast ends. Now, for me, I loved this podcast. It showed Lesnar in a lot more human light. I mean, I know he was likeable already, but you know, it was nice to not just be able to relate to Lesnar on the vibe that he's an ass-kicking machine, a fucking war machine, as he used to call himself, you know, suplex machine, a fucking unstoppable force, if you will. But as a human being, you could really feel for him. I mean, I know it really made me feel compassion when he said about the diverticulitis and how much that kind of fucked him up when he was trying to do UFC, you know, trying to be in the UFC, and he would have been still in UFC. I mean, I don't mean to say that I'm happy that he got ill, because, you know, I never wish illness upon anyone. I never want anyone to be ill, but I am rather happy that things have worked out like this. It's a pleasure to see Lesnar back in the WWE ring, because me, you know, as a person, I would personally feel quite gutted that Lesnar, you know, that Lesnar wasn't back in the WWE. When he left, it was a bit too soon. Anyway, guys, that's gonna do it for this review. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe if you have. Don't forget to, you know, well, I say don't forget, but don't forget to come back here for my Hell in a Cell review this Sunday, which you can catch on the WWE Network for only $9.99. It's still better than Twitter, although it isn't really, but I just promoted your shit, WWE. So, you know, where's my paycheck? Anyway, guys, this has been Take a Look. Thank you very much for watching. I'm out. Peace.
That's it. He's done. And he's heading back in. Ouch! Wow, what a reversal by Lesnar. Yeah, I know they call him the Beast, but that was just beautiful. Brock moves in. This could be it. Brock Lesnar! What a crafty maneuver. Steve Austin doing a great job of turning that around. Well, there's no wiggle room here for Steve Austin. What an impact from that kick. Another was shot with a boot. And that one hurt his hand. Oh, man. He landed right on his neck from that German suplex. How much more? How much more are you willing to pay to win this match? This is unreal. Austin's in. Oh, man. He landed right on his neck from that German suplex. Watch it. F5. An F5 from Brock Lesnar. Just took him out. We got a cover. 2, 3.
Whether you like it or not, there's the match right there.
And here's just some of the action. Let's go to the highlights here. Whoa, I can't believe what we saw in that match. Let's play. I can't believe what we just saw. Highlight after highlight. Let's look at some of them right now.
Here is your winner.